crocodiles.
Okay.
Basically, how does a crocodile keep its rump underwater and keep it from getting sunburned? They pick up stones. In the modern context, they'll pick up rebar, pieces of brick. These are held in the stomach and serve as ballast. So if you've got crocodiles in your deposit, you begin to wonder, was this something that a croc picked up and happened to die and redeposit it? There used to be a beautiful exhibit in the Natural History Museum in London. May still be there, but it showed what the contents of a Nile crocodile's stomach, and bone and rock and a little pile of blue beads. And with typical British, what shall we say, approach, a little sign saying, "It is not known whether these were worn when ingested."
Before I'd gone out to the field with Bill, when I really got hooked, I spent the first semester going through that crisis of confidence. And I went into Bill's office towards the end of that first semester, and I told him I was going to quit. And I told him that I think it's not right for me. But Bill said, just wait. I'll help you move on to whatever you want to move on to, but just come out to the field one summer. And then it was that summer that he really hooked me, and got me interested in those questions about the extinction that killed off the dinosaurs and a lot of other vertebrates and other organisms, and what precipitated the rise of mammals that we know today. The analogy that I like to use now is that the area in northeastern Montana that we work in, this Hell Creek area, this study area, is sort of like the model organism, the fruit fly or the lab rat for studying this extinction and this rise of mammals. It's the model system, and it's a classroom because it's all there. It's all laid out. And so Bill held class for me, and he is pretty good at developing a Socratic sort of dialogue about the sorts of questions he's thinking about and putting them towards you, and sort of working through the thought process right there on the outcrop.
Going to the Apollo to see different actors. We couldn't go to clubs. I was old enough to go to the clubs at that time, but we could go and hear the stage shows. And they had people like Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Benny Carter, all types of big bands, sometimes led by pianists. And then had a chance to see great singers and great dancers. Saw Red Fox with Slappy White. So all these Babe Lawrence, great tap dancer, and many others. So that stayed in my mind. So when I finally started learning the piano, you remember all these influences, you remember all these people and what you saw, and that was seeping into your playing. And then the great thing was, when I was a kid, I imagined playing with a big band, because I see Duke and Basie, they have this big band, and the sounds would come back at you. So now I'm playing at Birdland with Lester Young, which I probably saw at the Apollo also. And opposite us would be Count Basie. And so I got a chance to hear that close up right there in the same stage. And one time the Count had an interview to do with Steve Allen, the television show, Steve Allen. So he left to do that, and the band started to play, so I had to play with the band. So that was a great thrill, because here I'm always imagine what it would be. So now I had a chance to experience it, and for I think 45 minutes, the band was in front of me, and I was playing the piano with the Count Basie band. So that was great.
My first memory of unions was when my dad went to a carpenter's union when I was 4 or 5 years old. I remember sitting on his lap, and it was in an ancient old building downtown Golden. And evidently they were fining scabs that night. And the guy had a big round piece of wood on a desk or a table and a big wooden hammer, and he would say, $25 fine, and he'd smack that wood with that hammer. And they talked about rats. And so after the meeting was over, I asked my dad, why are they fining rats? What has rats got to do with it? Because I had this image of rats. And so then that's when he explained to me this was people who had scabbed on their union, and they were being fined for working non-union. And so that was my first exposure at 4 years old. Then later on, as I was growing up, he actually had scabbed on a strike, because he drove home one night and his windshield was busted. And I asked him how his windshield got busted, and he said a guy threw a brick through it. And I said, why would he do that? And he said, because I crossed the picket line. And I said, why did you do that? And he said, so I could bring money home for you and your mother and the rest of you. That was his attitude then.
As a youngster, one of the things that was disturbing was that we felt isolated, because nobody that I knew that was Mexican-American had an official position.
Yes.
The store owners weren't Mexican-Americans. The post office, the postmaster or postmistress actually was not Mexican-American. You just, I just didn't see that representation in the community as a whole. And I think there's an impulse among folk to be recognized. I sometimes think about Indian children in California and how they must feel sort of isolated because they see very little representation of Indians, at least favorably, in movies or radio or whatever. And I had that sort of sense. So to finally see and read something that recognized who we were, the contribution we had made, the hopes for the future and all that, made an impact on me.
It's a letter that I wrote to myself. It's dated December 8th, 1941. What is the meaning of war? Bloodshed, death, and destruction. They seem so far away. Have you ever been through a war? I haven't. I can't conceive of hundreds of people, men and women, being killed, their lives ended just because one or two men up in the sky release a bomb. I can't imagine the horror that they must be in with the sound of the air raid warnings, a warning that means the possibility of your death. I can't help but wonder why it is possible for one or two men to give the signal which will put other men to death.
The first few days, I went to a little restaurant, that didn't charge too much, and I took always the cheapest thing on the menu, whether I liked it or not. But I had to stretch my money. I only had maybe $15 to last me. But I knew that I would be paid at the end of the week. Not only that, I had to pay bus fare. Well, so I was going to the restaurant for the first week and using the bus. And then when we found out that they pay once a month, every one of us, and like I say, the ones that we used to wave to, they were the same way. Oh my God. They too were running short of money. So by the end of the third week, no money. I walked from North Sacramento to McClellan Air Base, 2 miles, over 2 miles. and I'd walk after work. And so did the others. We would gang up and we'd all just go as a team. And when we got our first paycheck, that was the funniest thing, because we all ordered steaks. We were competing with each other. We all ordered steaks. And when they delivered them, they had a crew on the side with a mop and a bucket, and we couldn't figure out whether they were going to close early or something. Nope. We took one bite of that food, and it all came up.
Well, Mother just decided that I should be doing something for the government too and for our service people. And that's when she took me down and helped me lie about my age, and we got in. I don't remember too much about it. They never really asked a lot of questions. But I looked pretty mature for my age. And yeah, went through the union and got right in.
So you started as a scaler.
Yeah.
So what did that mean? Do you remember your first day?
Oh, yeah. I do. Not a lot of training. 100-pound air pressure gun. It's a big hose. It's fastened in the wall with air. And it has a big chisel on the end of it. I have a picture of somebody that had been one there. And so he told me very little. And I'm supposed to go behind the welders. I weld, and I'm supposed to use this chisel air gun and chisel the slag away. And not get too close to welders because of the flash. Always wear my glasses, and not because of the burns, welder burns. And so I'm looking at this. I put the chisel in, the big chisel, and I'm looking down at it, and I pushed the lever, and the thing popped up and cut me right in the face. So first aid right away, my mother went, "Oh my God!" But that's how I learned to do it, and that's how I did it. And then I got too close, and I never got a flash, but I did get a welder burn. I learned to stay away from them.
I was working, and I was standing there because I had my hood up, and I was looking at the ship. I thought, oh, that's one ship that's going to do its duty and bring somebody home. And a man tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "Would you like to go to that launching?" I said, "Would I? Oh, I was out of this world." He says, "Well, take your leathers off, and you go there those stairs, and you go up. And you sit on that platform." And I thought, this man has to be somebody, because my leaderman would have said, "Kay, it's time to get back to work." Not a word was said. I was in seventh heaven. I mean, I couldn't believe it, and I was totally underdressed because I had on the outfit that I wore under my leathers. Everybody else had furs, dressed up to the nines. It was probably 4 o'clock in the morning, because I worked from 11 to 7. And usually there was no launchings on the graveyard shift.
Of the segregated hospital system in the South, which only began to break up in the 60s, in the late 60s actually, when President Lyndon Johnson, God bless his soul, created a special task force in his government that went out to all of these hospitals, not only the ones that had gotten Hill burden funds for construction, but more importantly, the ones that had become very dependent on Medicaid and Medicare at that point in time. He basically said, "You are going to desegregate your hospitals." They fought bitterly. A lot of them did. One of the notable exceptions to this was the University of Alabama at Birmingham. That hospital, again, Birmingham with all of the emotional, historical things associated with civil rights. That UAB, that the University of Alabama at Birmingham Hospital, Medical Center, would kind of lead the way in terms of saying, yes, we're going to desegregate because that's the thing to do. So that they did away with the white and colored signs and the segregated facilities, and they didn't go through the game playing that a lot of the rural hospitals, a lot of the southern hospitals did, where they would hear that the inspectors were coming, and they would very quickly put black patients in the room temporarily with white patients, but as soon as they would leave, they would take them out and put them back in the segregation. So it was very tough.
I really enjoyed having the authority, the capacity to just try stuff, just try experiments. There's so much in government where we will hypothesize as to, if we do this, here is the way I think things will happen. So I always like pilot projects, and let's just try this. We'll see what happens. In 1969, when I was working for the consulting firm that was working on Disney World, or we had a client, Irvine Land, and I remember the partner saying, "What do you want to do with your career?" And I said, "I want to be a creative bureaucrat." And he looked at me, because those two words just didn't go together, and he just, but that's what I ended up doing. Government could do good for people. We needed government, but we needed good government. And we needed government to be adventurous, innovative, creative.
We have been depressed by the strange ways of distributing power that the school system represents, and the coercive nature of assignment of families to particular schools. If you're not rich, there is a kind of blindness to the disempowerment of lower income people by government, by the schools particularly, and the mistrust of the family. If you disempower fathers and mothers, they're going to, in my judgment, obviously most people, if you disempower them, they say, "Okay, you take care of me," and they lose their initiative, they lose their responsibility. The kids see them as limp and useless people who can't keep them out of the school that they hate or whatever. That doesn't seem to me to be fair to the people who can't afford to come and live in fancy Berkeley houses, and B, it destroys the elementary institution of which is our family.
Land acquisition was one of the things that I feel I did really well for City College of San Francisco, because first of all, there is no land to be had in San Francisco. Any land that you acquire, you take it from someone else. Yeah. You get it from somewhere else. There's no land that's not already accounted for. And so to be able to, work through the political system to purchase land to build a new campus in the Mission District, and to purchase land to build a new campus in Chinatown. The opportunity to run the bond campaign came from the superintendent of the Unified District, Bill Rojas. He was one of the first people I asked to meet with, because I wanted to make sure we had a clear path for high school students to come to City College. I wanted to know if there were any obstacles or anything we needed to get out of their way, or things that we needed to do to help them. So I went to him to ask him about that. And right there at that first meeting, he asked me if I would want to join him. I don't believe any other community college in the state had even run a bond campaign.
Talking about one restaurant that has a significance to the company name was actually Spenger's in Berkeley. At the time, I had a beard, a different color and bigger. And I did go at one time with my partner to have dinner there. And there's a lot of people, so you put your name on the list. And I was, at the time, going by George, because I was sick and tired explaining my name 500 times. So I said, "I'm George." And he said, "I already got a few Georges." "Oh, you look like a saint with my beard." So I said, "Okay, put me down as St. George." That was one aspect of the name. It's kind of a funny thing. St. George is also the patron saint of the town of Freiburg, where I grew up a lot and went to school. as well as the patron saint of the British spirits industry. So there's a few, when it came to how can I name the company, I wanted my name somewhat in there. But Jörg is not a name that you can use in people can't even say it. So I ended up, I said, and here's the kicker, because now I'm in California, I can do what I want. I can appoint myself sainthood too. And so I said, yep, the name is St. George Spirits.
Let me just say that having a good palate is the core of good winemaking. Mm-hmm. And I don't think some people may have it naturally, but for me, the opportunity to taste broadly was an important part of my palate development, and to taste the wines that were generally considered to be great wines, mm-hmm. so that I was able to develop my own criteria for what constituted very high quality wines. I always say, I really like this wine, but to be able to analyze it, to have an approach to the tasting that helps you assess the wine versus your criteria, that takes more time. So there were many different ways to fine-tune your palate. But the more you taste, the better, and the more you taste great wines, the better, and the more you taste with people who have developed palates, the better.